Okay. This happens every now and then. I will sit down to make a video and I'll have a very specific idea in mind of the topics I'm going to discuss. I don't script these or anything, but I'll write down some notes and be like, oh, okay, make sure to hit that point and that point and that point, and then we're done, okay? But every once in a while, when I sit down and just think about the topic a little bit, like ruminate on it before I hit record, every once in a while, this will happen where I'll be like, wait a minute, wait. Do the numbers add up? Wait, what is, like, I'm cracking the Da Vinci Code or something, and I'm like, wait a minute, I think I found something. All right, so chapter 1097, spoilers. It came out today officially, but I'm still giving chapter 1097 spoilers. Chapter 1100 is coming up, guys. It's right around the bend. What's it going to be? Who knows? But, all right. So chapter 1097, we found out that Monkey D. Dragon, Luffy's dad, used to be a Marine. And that was what the topic of this video is mainly supposed to be about. It probably still will be, but I don't know. I might go off on tangents and go off on another stray path to the other thing. Okay, so we'll hold off for that for a second. That fact, honestly, that Dragon said to Kuma was like, oh, how did you learn about all these weapons, Dragon, and how to fight and everything like that? And Dragon says, like, well, I used to be in the English dub. Dragon speaks like Batman. It's a little weird at first, but it actually kind of fits. He's like, well, Kuma, back in the day I used to be a Marine, but I found no justice in that organization, so I decided to leave and become a vigilante. Now I fight the Tenryubito and the world government and anyone that would dare stand in the way of freedom. I am the rebellion. I am the bringer of storms and damnation. I am Dragon. And then, like, lightning in the background. I want to say, like, every time Dragon speaks, gives a really impassioned speech, there's lightning in the background. Because he probably could do that because he can kind of control the damn weather. Okay, anyway. It didn't surprise me that much he used to be a Marine. I kind of assumed, because Garp, obviously, is, like, the strongest damn Marine that ever did Marine. And we saw how much Garp, there we go. We saw how much Garp, I'm gonna leave that part in. We saw how much Garp trained Luffy up to be a Marine, okay? We can also kind of see the reason why Garp tried so damn hard to get Luffy to become a Marine was because he maybe felt like he wasn't hard enough on Dragon. Maybe with Dragon, Garp was just kind of like, all right, son, you're gonna be a Marine. And maybe Dragon in his young age, maybe like Dragon was around like 5 years old, he was like, yeah, Dad, yeah, Dad, I'm gonna be a Marine just like you. I'm 5-year-old Dragon, da-da-da-da. And Garp is like, that's what I like to see, son. And so maybe Garp didn't have to push it too much with Dragon because Dragon just kind of looked up to his dad. He's this Navy hero, and so I'm just gonna be a Marine. So Dragon became a Marine. We don't know the whole story about what rank he was when he left or how when he was recruited, how old he was or whatever. But at some point, he left the Marines because he found no justice there. All right, that makes sense. That ties back into the whole thing when Luffy is finally born and he grows up a little bit. He's like the age of like 5 himself. Garp is like, all right, Luffy, it's time I make you a Marine. You're gonna be a Marine, you tell me? I'm not screwing it up like I did with Dragon. I didn't focus too much on him. I didn't pay enough attention to him. You, Luffy, I'm gonna make damn sure you become a Marine. And then Luffy's like, actually, I want to be a pirate. I met this guy named Shanks. And Garp is just like, God dang it, can I have anybody carry on the family legacy? The legacy of the fist. That's good why Kobe came around. Garp is like, Kobe, I'm adopting you. He's like, okay. My parents, I guess, died years ago. I never talk about them, so okay, Dad. It is like, all right, cool. I got somebody in the Marines in the family, finally. It took forever. All right, you will now be Monkey D. Kobe. It's like, Kobe's like, all right, can that work? Wait, hold on a minute. Can you adopt people into the Will of D? I guess you could. The whole idea of the Will of D is like an inherited will. It's nothing like necessarily blood related. I guess you could do that. Garp could adopt Kobe, and then he could be Monkey D. Kobe. Sure. Ironically, weirdly enough, that would also make him Luffy's uncle. We're going a little bit JoJo Part 4 with it, but okay, I'm all right with that. That's not even... Okay, I'll write that one down too, but that wasn't the direction I was going with this. All right. If you want me to talk about the Dragon Marine thing, that was the main topic of the video, so I will discuss that. What rank was he when he left? I don't think it was anything that high. Some people are saying, like, oh, maybe he was a really high rank. He was Admiral class. I don't think so. I don't think he was that high in the Marines. Granted, he would have been Garp's son that joined, so there's a little bit of a pedigree there and a little bit of just like, oh my god, he is the son of the hero and the fist. And Garp obviously, would have trained up Dragon very well. Even before Dragon got his devil fruit power and knew hockey and everything like that, I'm sure the training he went through was pretty intense. Dragon and Garp were probably working on the battleship bags when Dragon was a little tyke and everything like that, so I'm sure Dragon would have been pretty strong. But I'm thinking, honestly, the idea is that Dragon left once he started to realize there was no real justice with the Marines. Okay, I don't think it would have taken Dragon tremendously long to figure that out. 25 years ago was when Kuma mentioned the Revolutionary Army received their first bounty. Like, the government finally issued a warrant for their arrest 25 years ago when they were just the Freedom Fighters, this ragtag mercenary group, essentially. So, obviously, it isn't just 25 years ago that Dragon formed the group. The way Kuma talked about it was that he had been reading about the exploits of Dragon for some time before that. So I'm going to assume that Dragon formed the Freedom Fighters at least 26 years ago, 27 years ago, somewhere in that time span. Let's at least say 30 years ago to 25 years ago is when they were formed, okay? It was just 25 years ago that government finally realized, like, okay, this is not just a small little group that's going to, go away or burn out really quickly. It seems like they're actually making waves and gathering some steam. We should probably put a warrant out for these guys' arrest. Okay, that makes sense. Dragon would have been 30 years old at that time, 25 years ago when he got the first wanted poster put on him. Okay, 30 years old. So maybe somewhere between 25 to 30 years old, that's when he formed the Freedom Fighters, okay? I like to think maybe Dragon might have been maybe a captain, maybe something like that, been a captain in the Marines, maybe a Commodore. At the very most, okay, since he is Garp's son and there's a little bit of maybe nepotism there, maybe he did become a vice admiral. I guess it's feasible. That's a little young to be a vice admiral at like age 25 or 26. Smoker's in his mid-30s right now. He's a vice admiral. Most of the vice admirals like Momonga and like the Giants, well, the Giants aren't a great example because they age, differently than humans. But, like Stainless and everybody like that, Doberman. Doberman's actually going to come back into this video later. But yeah, they're all like in their 30s, 40s, 50s kind of age, okay? But there are some vice admirals that are a little younger. I could see Dragon being a vice admiral. I like to think he was a little lower of rank than that. Maybe captain, maybe Commodore, whatever. I don't think the rank really matters, but at some point he realized that the Marines are corrupted. By greater extension, the world government is very corrupted. The whole system of the Tenryubito, like basically owning slaves and stuff, and then we have to like basically live under their thumbs. Dragon noticed that. He saw the writing on the wall, and he was just like, okay, I'm getting out of here, and I'm fighting the real fight. I don't know how I'm going to make it work, but I know it's not here. I know the place in the Marines. It's like Smoker, after the Alabasta incident, was like saying to Tashigi, he was like, we need to change the Marines, but we're not going to change anything if we're low rank. We need to get a higher rank if we hope to change anything, right? And so that's when, like, Smoker and Tashigi, that was, like, their goal. I don't think that was the first time a Marine had realized that. I don't think, like, Smoker was the first one to have this epiphany of, like, I need to change the Marines. Well, I'm only a captain or a Commodore. I need a higher rank. I need to become an admiral. That's what I'll do. I'll become an admiral, and then I'll change the Marines. I think a lot of Marines have tried that, even maybe Sakazuki to an extent. Sakazuki became the fleet admiral, and even he now realizes how much, little power he really does. How much little power, yes. Where you become an admiral, fleet admiral, you're basically directly under the thumb of the Tenryubito, right? So what if Dragon was just kind of like, I ain't changing shit in the Marines. It doesn't matter if I am a seaman recruit or a captain or a vice admiral, admiral, or even the fleet admiral. I cannot change the organization from inside the organization. That's not going to happen. I need to be outside of the organization, outside of the overall paradigm if I'm going to change anything, okay? So that's why he defected and then became a freedom fighter, eventually revolutionary, okay? Much to Garp's chagrin, I guess. There was that scene where him and Kuzan were training on the battleship bags, and Garp is like, my damn son ran off and became a revolutionary. Boom! You don't know what it's like, Kuzan. You know, just like, so yeah. I guess Kuzan also kind of Garp's adopted son, a little bit, sort of. Garp is, and I feel bad for him. He's just trying to find a replacement, you know? It's just like, Kuzan, you're my new son. Kobe, you're my new grandson. Let's just go with that. It's just like, all right. It's okay, Garp. It'll be all right, Garp. It'll be okay. But anyway, yeah, Dragon left, started up the Freedom Fighters, all that jazz. He's very pragmatic, Dragon. He's not the kind of guy that's like, I'm just going to go straight and attack Marijois. He knows that's stupid. He knows that's not going to work, okay? So it's like, all right, this is going to be a long game. This is going to be a grassroots kind of effort, all right? A Dragon is like, I need to slowly but surely loosen that iron grip that the Tenryubito have on the entire world. To use a phrase, he could not just lop the dragon's head off right away, okay? He's got to play this smart. So he's like, got to build up an army, got to get some funding, go to the Four Blues and begin to slowly cause these oppressive kingdoms to, revolt. And then after that, turn your attention on the Grand Line. And then after that, and only then, attack Marijois. Dragon knew this process was gonna take years, decades maybe, the rest of his life. Every bit of his free time is gonna be devoted to this effort, but that's the kind of guy Dragon is, all right? So yeah, Dragon used to be a Marine. I could see how he joined. It's pretty obvious, and I can understand why he left. Also pretty obvious, okay? Now, before we get into the other big thing that I wanted to address, we also have something that people have been kind of sleuthing on the past couple of days because Dragon was a Marine. So, do you guys remember this right here? I'll just put it, I don't know how much you can see it because it's real. Ah, there it is right there. Okay. Right. So, this is a huge double color page spread that Oda drew in promotion of One Piece Film Z, or One Piece Film Z if you're in certain parts of the world. Personally, I'd like Zed more. It just sounds cool. Like Lord Zed from Mighty Morphin. Anyway. This is an image that has a lot of Marines. Not every single one of them. Like, I don't even think Kobe is on here, but most Marines drawn when they first join the Marines. And I think the reason why, like, Kobe is not on there is because these are, like, the old-timers, like, the old generation. Like, what did Garp and Suru and Sengoku and the Admirals look like when they first joined, okay? So, there's a bunch of characters on this, okay? And there's even, like, a bunch of hidden characters as well. Like, you could see Roshinade on there. Roshinade, I think, was not even, like, revealed at this point in the story. I don't even know we were at Dressrosa yet. I think we might have still been in Punk Hazard. Virgo is in there, if you see him there. There's just a bunch of random... Panda Man is in there. Just a bunch of random characters, right? So I scoured this entire thing, and a lot of the people on the internet did, trying to find Dragon. It's like, oh, where's Dragon? You know Oda must have drawn him somewhere on there. So two characters really stood out in terms of Dragon. First was this character. I understand. He looks a lot like Dragon. He's got like a prototype version of Dragon's tattoo. This is not Dragon. This is Vice Admiral Doberman. Doberman's actually at Egghead right now. He's one of the Vice Admirals that came to attack. He was actually one of like the personal attendants to Saturn. So yeah, Doberman is there. He has these scars all over his body. That is Doberman. That is not Dragon. Also, we saw Dragon, before he got the tattoo and he didn't have a scar. So, unless he got a scar when he was in the Marines, but then covered it up with makeup or something and then got a tattoo, yeah, that's not Dragon. Other person is this guy. This guy, granted, I don't believe is named. There's a Marine called Sicily that looks a lot like him, but I don't believe this is Sicily. I think it is another Marine altogether. I admit it does look a lot like Dragon, but once again, Dragon did not have any mark on his face at all before he got the tattoo, all right? Also, the hair doesn't really look quite right, but I guess you could always say he dyed it. So I started looking for Dragon myself. I found myself a high-res version of this, and I started scouring every corner of it. If you really look, and if you can find high-quality versions of this, you really zoom in, there's a bunch of characters way in the background that Oda doesn't even draw their whole faces. Up at the top, there's, faces that get cropped or, like, cut off or something like that. Dragon could very well still be part of this, right? I started looking around Garp. Maybe he would be close to his dad. Kind of the same deal that Oda drew Bellemere right next to Nami. Nami was, of course, not a Marine, but the Straw Hats are front and center in the color spread, and so Bellemere was right next to Nami, so I'm like, okay, maybe Dragon will be right next to Garp. And so I'm looking at Garp right here. Actually, let me pull it up on my end. And, like... There are a couple of characters next to him, which maybe it's this guy right here. Maybe that's Garp. I doubt it, but maybe. Or it could be a character that's up here and they're like half their faces are cut off or something. I don't know. Personally, if you want my opinion, if Dragon is somewhere in this color spread, I think he's either this guy or this guy. I don't know. They're both equally plausible. Maybe Dragon went back in his teenage years. Maybe Dragon was rocking the mohawk. He just thought the mohawk was the style at the time, you know? Or maybe he had a heart-shaped face when he was born, and then at some point it was like a Stewie Griffin thing, and he just hit his head or something really hard, and it flattened out back to where it is right now. Yeah, don't debunk it. It could be the case. All right, but yeah, Dragon might very well be on the color spread. Maybe he's a character that's cropped or off in the background, and Oda didn't fill in his face or something, but I don't see anybody super obviously Dragon in this cover spread. Okay, so yeah, that's the situation with Dragon and the Marines and all that. Now, here's the thing. Finally getting into this, okay? So, I'm thinking about Ginny, right? Like, I'm making this chart here of, like, everything that's going on with the Revolutionary Army, and it's like, okay, Kuma was, you know, this age, you know, 20 years ago, and then Dragon was this, and then Ginny was this, and I'm kind of lining everything up. And I'm remembering back when Ginny first appeared with Ivankov, and my first reaction in that chapter review was like, that's Luffy's mom! And then everybody in the comments was like, teching, that's obviously not Luffy's mom, it's obviously Bonnie's mom. And I'm like, oh, right, yeah, I guess that makes sense, because Kuma and Ginny, they end up living together, and Bonnie is obviously a glutton, and they mention multiple times Ginny is a glutton, and it makes sense. Yeah, that makes total sense. Okay. Does it, though? Does it, though? All right. When I did the review for the last chapter, 97, Bonnie doesn't show up, and I'm sitting there and I'm kind of justifying it in like, all right, they probably had Bonnie off screen, you know, because Bonnie was around somewhere around 20 years ago. She was born. She existed at that point, okay? We saw a flashback with her and Kuma visiting Vegapunk at that time, okay? Or it was mentioned that she was there during that time, okay? All right, but we don't see her at all in the chapter. And I tried to just, like, write that off as, like, it's probably off screen. But I'm like, wait a minute. That's a really important part of Kuma, of his life. You would imagine the birth of his daughter. You'd imagine that would be on there. Even if you were strapped for time, even if Oda couldn't fit everything in the chapter, you think he could dedicate one little panel to Kuma holding his newly born daughter or something, right? Ginny did say in the chapter, like, marry me, Kuma, I would make a great wife. Kuma doesn't say yes. He actually says no. He actually does turn her down kind of and just try to change the subject. He's like, yes, you would make a great wife. I'm not saying you wouldn't. It's not an issue with you, Ginny. It's an issue with my parents were literally, you know, kidnapped, and we all were, and we were taken to Marijois, turned into slaves because of my bloodline. I couldn't fathom having a child with you, and then the Marines show up to take her away. And then us as well, and it's the same thing. We got to go through the whole thing all over again? And so that's why Kuma was really reticent to, you know, get married to Ginny and have children or anything. And so Kuma changes the subject, starts talking about Dragon, and we don't address it for the rest of the chapter. At the very end of the chapter, when 14 years ago, when Ginny would have been 37, Kuma would have been 33, Ginny is now established as the Eastern Army General of the Revolutionaries, and she is based there, and then she's really happy, and then he's like, oh, why are you so happy, Ginny? And she's like, oh, because we're going to be rendezvousing with Kuma's division tomorrow, and I'm really excited. And then the chapter ended with her being captured, okay? So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, wait a minute. Ginny was the commander of the Eastern Army of the Revolution. She would have been very well acquainted with Dragon at this point. 14 years ago, Luffy would have already been born. He would have been 5. He would have been 5 14 years ago. Ivankov did mention at one point Dragon, whenever he's always looking to the east. I'm thinking Ginny is Luffy's mom. I'm gonna run that back. I'm gonna be like, I technically said it at the end of the review. That's Luffy's mom. You know, a lot of people did. I wasn't the only one. But here's the thing, though. And then I was like, well, wait a second. Couldn't she maybe be Bonnie and Luffy's mom? Luffy has a half-sister? Like, is there any reason why not? Like, honestly, like, Kuma and Ginny could have gotten it on and had Bonnie, and then they spent a lot of time apart, and then Ginny and Dragon were hanging out one night. I don't know, maybe some wine was involved, and... okay, maybe they're a polyamorous. Maybe just Kuma doesn't care. It's just like, nope, that's just how we do things. You know, maybe. Or, you know, it could have been a thing where, like, Kuma and Ginny maybe genuinely loved each other, and then they had Bonnie. Maybe with Ginny and Dragon, it was more of a situation of just like, hey, war is a tough thing. We could all die tomorrow. It's been a while since, you know, Kuma's on the other side of the planet. It's been a while. Maybe a one-night type of situation. I don't know. And Dragon was just like, I am Dragon. I am the... all right. And then, you know, it doesn't have to be like true, genuine love. Like, all right, Ginny, but beforehand, we need to get married in a church before I would even think about. Nah, it might have been just a situation of just like one night of passion, and then boom, Luffy is born. Because Luffy and Bonnie, now that I'm actually thinking about this, Oda, even in an SBS, in the last SBS video I made, there was this whole thing where the first introduction between Luffy and Bonnie was awkward as all hell. It's so awkward to the point even Luffy realized it, and he was like, right, I'm sorry that saying your dad becoming a mindless cyborg was cool, and I'm also sorry for calling you Bogey instead of Bonnie. I will remember your name from now on, right? So what if it is kind of a thing where it's going to turn out that, like, Luffy and Bonnie are half siblings, and maybe this is also an explanation why it took Bonnie so damn long to become relevant to the story. I mean, not so much as Arouge. Maybe Arouge is secretly Luffy's older half-brother or something like that. But no, it's like, maybe it's like, oh, well, Bonnie took so long to show up in the story. She's not showing up in a big way until now. Maybe that's the reason why. Maybe she's going to be connected in a strange way, right? Now, there is another angle to this. There is another angle. And that's like the Ginny being Luffy's mom thing is kind of viable, in my opinion, right now. It seems very likely. The whole thing with Bonnie, though, might in fact be a clone situation. It's very possible. Kuma knew Vegapunk very well, and it might have been a thing where, and we know Bonnie is not a buccaneer. Now, it's not entirely impossible that it could have skipped generations and stuff. Not every single child of a buccaneer might be a buccaneer in terms of like a big, strong person, right? Possible. And we saw one of the parallel futures that Bonnie went into, the twisted, altered futures with her ability, was like a big, bulky version of herself. Okay, so she might have buccaneer blood, but it might not be buccaneer blood in the way of, like, you know, actual having a kid. It's maybe a situation where Vegapunk made her. She's a clone of Kuma, or something like that, or a clone of Ginny or something. I'm not really sure how that would go about that, but considering Vegapunk is involved, and we know Stussy is a clone, and Weevil's probably a clone, and we got clones coming out the wazoo now. You know, the Germa are all clones and everything like that. Yeah, it's very possible Bonnie... like, Oda might have set this whole thing up as a red herring. Like, oh yes, it is so obvious that Ginny is going to be Kuma's wife and therefore having Kuma's child. It makes so much sense, right? Of course. And then it's the twist. It's like, actually, Bonnie was a clone the whole time. Actually, Ginny wasn't even Bonnie's real mom. But actually, Ginny was Luffy's mom. Okay. All right, we're just going to wind it back to the original theory. It's like, I'm fine with that, kind of. Because, yeah, it is a little strange. I will admit. It is a little strange that we didn't see a Bonnie at all in the last chapter with all the flash forwards in Kuma's life. Not even a mention. Not even of, like, man, what are we going to do with Bonnie now that we're joining the Revolution? I don't think they were married, and I don't even think they had kids. It seems the idea, you know, right there. Okay, so, you know, hold on to that. And, oh, by the way, people might say, well, like, well, Ivankov didn't apparently know about this. Ivankov was like, "Hey, Dragon, why are you always looking off to the east? Perhaps you have family there?" And Dragon is just like, "Get out of my personal life, Ivankov." And Ivankov is just like, "Oh, okay, whatever, hee-haw." You might say it was like, well, Ivankov was very close with Ginny. Wouldn't he have known about that? Not necessarily, no. Not if it was... If Dragon and Ginny were married, sure, Ivankov would know about that. If Dragon was very public about, like, we're gonna have a child, and Ginny's like, I'm really excited about our baby that we're going to have, Ivankov would know. If it was just a one night of passion kind of deal, and then Ginny goes off, like Dragon was visiting the Eastern Army, and then something happens, and then he leaves, and then a couple of days later, Ginny's like, okay, I'm pregnant. It might be a thing with Roger. We're like with Rouge and Roger. Rouge understood, oh my God, I'm pregnant with the King of the Pirates' child. I'm not telling this to anybody. Because you saw what the Marines did. They literally went to the South, rounded up every woman that was pregnant, and killed them. So, Ginny, this would have been after that, too. Maybe Ginny heard about that. Like, oh, yeah, the Marines killing a bunch of pregnant women because of of Roger's kid. So maybe Ginny was like, I am pregnant with the head of the Revolutionary Army's child. Yeah, no one's learning about this. Not even other revolutionaries are learning about this. She's going to keep that a secret until her grave, which might in fact be coming up pretty soon here. So maybe Ivankov didn't know about it, and this, honestly, this isn't even the first time that Ivankov, like something that happened really close in the Revolutionaries that you think Ivankov would know about, did not know about. So when Ivankov was in Impel Down in level 5.5 setting up New Kamaland, and he was explaining how that existed to Bon Clay. Bon Clay's like, how did, like, these caverns in the prison, how does this even exist? What happened here? And then Ivankov was like, oh, I'm not the one that created this place. Apparently there was a prisoner a long time ago that had a devil fruit that was really good for digging. They're the ones that carved off this place like an anthill, and so by the time we arrived here, it was empty, and so I set up New Kamaland here. Hee-haw! The person that created Impel Down at level 5.5 was Morley. Morley was the one that used her push-push fruit to create that space. Ivankov does not know this, even though that Ivankov is a general of the Grand Line in the Revolutionaries, and Morley is the general of the West. They never actually found out about this. Okay, Oda even confirmed it when he explained this whole thing in an SBS one time. He said, yeah, Ivankov does not know. Ivankov never found out that Morley was the one that created this space, even though they worked together. So the idea that Dragon's not going to kiss and tell, he's not going to tell Ivankov or even his closest generals, he's not going to say that shit. Okay. Maybe the reason Dragon and Ginny didn't tell anybody also is because they didn't want Kuma to find out. Maybe that's the reason. Maybe it's just like something happened one night and it was a night of passion and it was incredible, but then it was like, oh boy, I can't let Kuma find out about that. Oh boy, yeah, he might be a little upset. I'm just gonna say, it's like, so Ivankov's like, oh, do you have family in the East? Shut up, Ivankov! I don't have any family. I'm Dragon. Like, that's it. All right. Well, anyway, that's the video. Dragon's a Marine, also Luffy's dad. Also Bonnie's mom might not be Ginny. Also Luffy's mom might be Ginny. And also, she looks like Luffy. Like, I'm just gonna say, she looks like Luffy. If you were gonna say this was Luffy's mom, I would be like, yeah, she looks like him. And she loves to eat a bunch of stuff, just like Luffy does, just like Bonnie does. All right. Later. Bye, that's all I had to say. Have a good night, everyone.